Um, Emily, everyone, could you please give your attention to this short video?
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Public speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The chair will call upon public speakers at the appropriate time. Each public speaker is requested to state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Public speakers who wish to speak in person should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Public speakers participating by Zoom who are wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of any written correspondence would like to speak during the meeting, they should raise their hand or submit a public speaker card. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Emily. Can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bernal for Commissioner Banales.
Here.
Commissioner G.
Here.
Commissioner Nowak.
Here.
Vice Chair Arnrich.
Here.
Chair Kelly.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum.
Thank you. So the first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone wishing to speak for an item that is not on the agenda? I don't see anyone here. Emily, do we have anyone online who wishes to speak?
We have no public comments, written or virtual.
Okay, so we will move on. So our next item is the consent calendar. Does anyone care to pull an item from consent?
I just have a comment, if I
Please,
could.
go ahead.
I think it's worth mentioning for all of us. Item F under quarterly sales tax projections. We should note that our sales tax has only grown for the year 0.9%. So that means it's mathematically, it's less money than the previous year. Inflation was 3%. The Bay Area almost hit inflation at 2.5%. But this is for Contra Costa County, so we ought to just be noting in our forecasting, that, and we already have an estimate that we could be upwards of 4.5% to 5.5% of inflation for this year. It's just worth noting on our forecasting. And, Hisham has shown us all the forecasts. And I think our reserve policy will help us in this case, but the fact is this is noteworthy. That's all. Otherwise, I would move the consent calendar as presented.
Okay.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, so motion by Arnott, seconded by Nowak. Can we have a roll call vote,
Public
please?
comment.
Oh, is there any public comment on any items on the consent calendar?
We have no public comment, written or virtual.
Okay, then a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bernal.
Yes.
Commissioner G.
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak.
Yes.
Vice Chair Arnrich.
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we're now on to our regular agenda items, and the first item is an action item by Linda Johnson to provide an update on legislation at the state and the federal levels.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you. I'm happy to introduce Mr. Mark Watts to provide us with a state legislative update. Thank you. Mark?
Thank you very much. Hi, good morning. Pleased to be here. Today I was going to brief you on two bills, give you a quick update. Also talk a little bit about the calendar because we're getting close to that point in time where bills are moving to the other house. And finally, give you an update on what's going on the Cap and Invest program. There was a major joint hearing in the Senate yesterday, and a lot of information was developed and shared with the public. So first of all, the two bills. The first bill I'm going to highlight is SB 1408 by Senator Arakeen. This is your bill for the extension of the authority for sales tax. The bill is sitting on the Senate floor, awaiting to be taken up in conjunction with the other bills as they come out of appropriations later in this month. I've been busy working with the author's office and coordinating outreach to members of the Senate that had not yet seen the bill in one of the committees it appeared. Things look like it's going to be a relatively smooth move once they take the bill up. The other measure is SB 1087 by Senator Cabaldon, who has a little piece of Contra Costa in his district. This bill is sponsored by MTC and the other three large MPOs, and it's intended to modernize the SB 375 Sustainable Community Strategies framework. Essentially, it does some technical changes by extending the planning cycle within the SCS, and also requires that regionally significant SHOP projects, major maintenance projects on the state highway system, need to be consistent with the SCS. So that bill is pending in Senate appropriations, and I think there's some intended amendments. I haven't seen all of them yet. So I think once the bill is moved out of appropriation, this will be an appropriate bill to look at in the interim period before it's set for hearing in the Assembly. In addition, in terms of the calendar, tomorrow is the last date for policy committees to meet before June 1st. And then next week is the last day for fiscal committees to meet, and that's the date, probably the 15th or the 14th, upon which the suspense calendar will be released for both appropriation committees. Those are the bills that had cost or revenue implications that have been held up in a suspense file. They'll be able to move forward or remain within the committee as of next week. June 1st, committees can start up again. In that interim period, it's floor session only so that each house can clear out their calendars. And then the budget bill is due for passage by June 15th. Finally, later this week, we expect to have the governor's major revision to the state budget. So we're looking forward to that. And then on Cap and Invest, if you recall, the Cap and Trade program was renamed Cap and Invest as they extended the bill or the program last summer. There's been a little bit of a controversy. You may have seen coverage of it within your communities. The ARB had the responsibility following the extension of the authority by legislation. They had the responsibility to reconcile their regulations with the new state law. They did come up with a series of amendments to Cap and Invest in January. It ran into substantial outreach and feedback from stakeholders, including industry, as being moving in the direction of being unaffordable, having unaffordable impacts on industry and manufacturing entities. So the ARB went back to work and came up with another set of amendments in April. In April, the amendments were really focused in on trying to get back to affordability. One of the major things that they did is they increased the amount of money from the emissions within the utility world so that there could be a larger credit given back to electricity consumers through the annual bill. That's been adjusted in terms of the first one will come out the door in the early fall. And in addition, they made some other major changes to soften the effect of the entire program on manufacturers and industry. The effect of that has been to reduce the amount available for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is the source of money that organizations like CCTA and others have been able to compete for transit and intercity rail program funding, very important funding source, as well as LC-TOP, which is a low carbon transit operation program. Instead of $4 billion for the entire annual Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund revenue base. It's now projected to be about 2 billion for the program, for the revenue base for the program, which results in zero money for the TIRCP program and LCTOP program I just mentioned. So there's a lot of consternation in the transportation and transit world. That was a major focus of the feedback that the Joint Committee heard yesterday. And we'll see if they make some changes. The CARB full board is intended to act on May 28th so that they can provide to the utilities the proper instructions on how to move forward with their climate credit. So that's my report for today. As I indicated, it's interesting time of the year, and I think the major focus over the coming weeks will be back on the Cap and Invest program.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions or comments here for Mark from the committee? Newell?
You had your line up, sorry. I understand SB 1087, I can read it, but what's the backstory? I mean, bills aren't passed because it's fuzzy, it's either power grab, change of that, punish or reward. So who's getting punished in this and who's getting rewarded and why?
I think I'd flip that around, sir, to say that the transportation world, the MPOs like MTC, the RTPAs like CCTA have had I won't say difficulty, but have been unhappy with the sustainable community strategy that SB 375 enacted a dozen years ago. And this is an attempt by the major MPOs, that would be, MTC, SACOG, SANDAG, and SCAG in Southern California, on behalf of all the transportation agencies, are trying to reconcile and make it easier to work within the sustainable community strategy world. So I don't think there's a major grab going on here. I think it's a softening of the policy approach within SB 375.
Good to know, thank you.
Can I just add
Yes, please.
something to that? So one of the reasons is extending this time period to do the planning,
Yes.
because it costs us about $50 million a year, a plan to do. And so if we can take that $50 million and put it into implementation of sustainable strategies rather than the planning process, then we can move in the direction of, instead of just planning and planning and planning, actually implementation. So that's one of the big pieces for MTC as to why we want the shift.
Good to know that there are actually bills out there doing something on the right side. I spent all day in Sacramento yesterday, so I'm a little bit jaded, so. And this is the one bill that did not come up yesterday. In fact, I don't think anybody I talked to knew about it, but.
And I would just add that this is an important move. You know, we spend a heck of a lot of money on planning and not that much money, it seems, according to the public, on actually doing things, implementing. So if we can implement things, it will just be a lot better, a lot easier. Any other questions? No. Is there anyone here who wants to speak on this item? And Emily, do we have anyone online who wants to speak?
There's no public comments for the state update.
Okay. So Mark, thank you very much, as always, for your presentation. We appreciate it. And now Lindy?
Thank you. And if I may, I did just want to mention that Mr. Watts and his team have put together a list of e-bike bills per the request of the board that I'll be emailing out to the board today, just so that they have the ability to sort of track those separately. I believe there's 10 on the list. So I'll be sending that out today.
Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm also happy to introduce Ms. Pike to provide our federal update. Thank you.
Welcome, Madeline.
Hi, it's great to see everyone. And apologize, my voice is a little cracked. I think the allergies are kind of bad this time of year. But I hope everyone's doing well. I just wanted to give a few updates on what's going on in Congress, this administration, particularly appropriations and the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. So I'll start with congressional appropriations first. We're kind of in the heat of appropriations season. The House Transportation Spending Subcommittee will schedule its first markup on May 21st. So this is consideration of the spending bill that will, excuse me, that will outline, or excuse me, that will fund this coming up fiscal year FY27 with a full committee expected to mark up the legislation on June 4th. The, I guess, slight conflict right now is the president's budget, which was released in April, calls for roughly 10% cuts to non-defense spending. So in this budget proposal, the competitive or the discretionary grant programs are what the president was largely looking at to cut. We can expect the House and Senate appropriators to ignore several of the proposed cuts, especially in this election year when members are trying to get wins for their districts and states. Excuse me. For the surface transportation reauthorization or the reauthorization of the IIJA, Congress, especially in the House, is actually starting to gain some significant speed on moving this forward. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee leadership, Sam Graves and Rick Larson from Missouri and Washington, respectively, have almost reached a bipartisan agreement on a top line funding number that should be around 500 to 550 billion for the next surface transportation bill. This is significantly lower than what a lot of advocates had hoped for, but no one really thought that there would be an agreement that was much higher than this, especially given the current congressional and administrative makeup. So I would also just want to note that one of the well, not really key, but one of the funding measures that both the Democratic and Republican leadership of House T&I have agreed to are introducing a federal registration fee for electric vehicles, which has not been a priority of Democrats or excuse me, it has not been popular with Democrats in Congress in a while. So don't expect this to necessarily move forward. We've got a long road ahead. The Senate still has not made much significant progress on moving any legislation or drafting text for a bill. Right now in this midterm election year, it's going to be pretty hard to move some of these massive bills forward. So we're still probably expecting a continued resolution of, or excuse me, a short-term extension of the current funding levels that likely that do expire September 30th, but we expect that there probably will be an extension of current funding and law for probably at least 6 months, but we'll continue to monitor that. As I said, the House Transportation Committee, they are looking at marking up a bill in the next couple weeks. We'll see if that actually happens. There's still some pretty significant disagreements on policy and funding, but there is a possibility that this bill will move forward, at least on the House side of things. I would be remiss to say that the president and the administration hasn't really weighed in too vocally on this, and so we've seen recently the case where if this administration isn't getting really involved, it's hard for leadership in both chambers to move things that are, somewhat, this isn't controversial, but to move big packages of legislation. Excuse me. I would also just like to say a couple, I guess, 2 days ago, I was with the Federal Highway Administrator, excuse me, McMaster, and he had stated that one of the issues with getting out some of these grants, some of the discretionary grant awards, and NOFOs, the notice of funding, has been because DOT has had a lot of staff, not just turnovers, but they've been having some difficulty retaining staff in the new administration. But he felt that they are at a point where they have significant staff to start pumping out some of these NOFOs and executing grant agreements more quickly. So I'm hopeful that that will actually start happening. There has been quite a lag with a lot of the discretionary grants that we expected to come out earlier in the year and be executed more sooner. I also just want to say that he had mentioned that Federal Highway and NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Association, are going to get more involved in autonomous vehicle policy because of the lack of congressional movement. Congress currently has a piece of legislation, the Self-Drive Act, that has not moved anywhere and has not gained significant support by the Democratic Party in the House. So US DOT wants to get more involved to the extent possible. What the administrator said is that we can expect a rollout of a V2X, or a vehicle to everything guidance that they are working on right now. And I think this is good news for CCTA, but he had reiterated that DOT, especially Federal Highway, is prioritizing smart infrastructure and connected corridors moving forward for the grants that they are looking to award. And then also would just say that the DOT, or yes, Secretary Duffy announced $999 million in available funding for the Safe Streets for All program. And this grant program is intended to make improvements to emergency response times, modernize rail crossings, and enhance safety for neighborhood streets. I guess the only other thing that I would note for the federal update is, and I'm sure you all have seen in the news, the recent Supreme Court decision regarding redistricting and narrowing the requirements for states to draw majority and minority districts. This has caused a significant just not uproar, but this has certainly caused concern amongst sitting members of Congress and both party leadership. We'll see how this plays out, but as of now, May 2026, there are over 55 incumbent members of Congress that have announced that they're not going to seek re-election. So we will continue to see how this plays out. I think that there will be, this just happened in the midst of primary season. So I think that there will be more long-term impacts of this that you'll see in the next election. And I believe that's all I have for now. Welcome any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Madeline. That is quite a mouthful. Any questions or comments here on the federal legislation? No?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Anyone here would they like to speak on this item? And Emily, is anyone online wanting to speak on this item of federal legislation?
We have no public comments, written or virtual.
Okay, Madeline, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move on to our next item, which is an action item presented by Brandon Hayes on the Interstate 680 northbound express lane completion project, something we've all been anticipating. Hello, Brandon.
Good morning, Chair Kelly and Commissioners. Let me get set up here really quick. All right, good morning. Brandon Hayes, Director of Construction. The item before you this morning is recommendation to award PCM services for Phase 1A for the northbound 680 Express Lane Project Phase 1. So we're going to go on a little bit of journey today. I'm going to do a project overview, some updates, give a more explanation of Progressive Design Build, DBIA update, that's the Association Design Build Institute of America, talk about the PCM procurement, PCM scope of services, and end with the recommendation. So first, a quick overview, and I recognize people seeing these slides a lot. This is really for Commissioner Nowak, so she can get familiar with this project. So this is the project. The very top, we have the I occupancy. We're going to be converting the HOV to the express lane. The bottom light blue will be adding a lane for express lane, and then we have the braided ramp. And to go a little bit more, that highlighted portion, and to be honest, I didn't know this had animations, and I kept it in here because I thought the animations were super cool. And a little spoiler alert, I have my first animation at the kind of towards the end of this presentation that I'm pretty excited about sharing. But this is converting that HOV lane to an express lane. Lower in that highlighted part, this is adding the lane for the express lane. And then I want to highlight some of the major work. So on the top right, throughout the project, we're doing pavement restriping, the toll system integration. But really those purple lines we see on there, that's the major work for this project. So between Monument and the 242, there's some roadway widening, retaining walls. We'll be reconstructing the sound walls, so removing them and placing them back. And then the most significant element is the entire braided ramp system, main to treat, which is the roadway widening, the Lawrence Way braided ramp. We're also doing a bridge widening across the canal. To have this all work, we need embankments with retaining walls and installing a new sound wall. So that bottom purple portion, that's really a bulk of the impacts and the civil work to the project. Another cool thing, I just had to keep this in here because I love this animation. This is the existing braided ramp with those merge and a potential weave conflict there. So now with the new proposed design, that will be separated with that braided ramp and will be a much safer on and off ramp. Some project updates. We last provided updates in April 2025 and December 2025 board meetings. We completed the project acceptance environmental documents in December 2025. HDR, the designer, continues working towards the 30% designs, and they'll be done with that in June 2026, just in a couple months. We've recently submitted the supplemental project report and the environmental revalidation to Caltrans, and that's because the original reports had phase 1 and 2 combined, so we had to do these supplementals to split it. So we have a very clear phase 1 and a phase 2. And then the mega grant is pending execution. So I want to go into a little bit more about Progressive Design Build, and in order to do that, I want to highlight or talk about Design Bid Build, which is really our traditional delivery method for the public sector and what's been around for decades. So at the very top, you have the owner, and we have two separate contracts with the designer and the contractor. We have the designer bring the plans all the way to 100%, and then we put that out to bid to the contractors, and whoever's the lowest price that with a responsible bid, that's who wins the project. One of the challenges to this really revolves around this Spearin Supreme Court case. So this is a U.S. versus Spearin in 1918. It was a court case between Spearin contractors and the U.S. government. And it was during a construction of a dry dock at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. They had to relocate the sewer, the contractor, and after heavy rains, the sewer system failed, caused a lot of damage, and the U.S. government said it was the contractor's fault. Contractor said it was the designer's fault, and ultimately, this Supreme Court case said that the owner guarantees the accuracy of the plans and the specifications. So with that, when the contractor follows these plans, any issues or defects are the responsible of the owner, not the contractor. So the contractor can assume that the plans and specs are error-free. Otherwise, it's the responsibility of the owner. On the flip side, the designer only has to meet the need of standard of care. This is the legal benchmark requiring them to perform services with the same skill, diligence, and judgment as an ordinary prudent professional in the same area under similar circumstances. That ends up being subjective, and that's what makes this all very challenging. You have a general contractor who has his liability based on the SPIRN, saying that errors are the responsibility of the owner. You have the designer whose liability is based off the professional standard of care, which says some errors are acceptable, and the owner ends up being responsible for some of these performance failures. We end up being the referee for a lot of these disputes. And that's where design bid build, there ends up being this liability gap. It's already challenging enough, but what this really ends up doing is there's a ton of gray areas. There's subjectivity to what is the legal responsibility for this. So if something goes wrong on a project, the contractor might say they built everything perfectly to the plans and specs. We go to the designer and we let them know they did specs, what happened here, and they'll say they did everything within the standard of care and it's not their responsibility. So as an owner, we end up being that referee, going back and forth, a lot of gray areas, and it really puts us in a lot of pressure and tension in the field. And I think anybody who's been on a challenging project can recognize how difficult this is to manage almost on a day-to-day basis to keep pushing the project through. So with design build, the designer and the contractor directly underneath the owner. This is for traditional design build. What happened in the past is that we would put out procurement documents and different design build firms would propose and there would be a set price and you'd move on. The problem with that is there was a lot of risk that wasn't completely figured out. The scope wasn't entirely clear. So that ended up having a lot of issues in itself. And the design, I jumped forward a little bit there. The liability and design build, this ends up being a one-stop shop for the liability. We get so the owner is no longer the arbiter of the disputes. Now getting back to progressive design build. In this, we have this phase one. The owner's directly contracted the design builder. We have our PCM firm over on the side, work on the design definition, and we go into phase one. Phase one's essentially done on a time and material basis with that design builder, and we work through the risks, the scopes, and we assign them in the correct place. And then we work on getting to that GMP, an agreed price that everybody's comfortable with the risk allocation. If we can't reach that price directly below that, we can off-ramp with a progressive design build team, and we hand it out a typical design bid build, and we open bids. So going a little bit more in depth here. So number one, the initial phase, the PCM team makes the procurement documents, specifies the project goals, criteria, and works on getting all that information. Then we issue the RFQ in the second phase there. We issue the RFQ, the RFP, select the design builder, go into phase one, which we showed on the previous slide, and that's working directly with the design builder, collaboratively, refining the design, looking at alternatives, developing cost. And number four is working on that GMP decision point. Can we agree on a price or not? And phase two is going into finalizing that design and constructing the project under the GMP. This is the exact same process as CMGC, which we know we really like. It worked really well in Bollinger. The main difference between progressive design build and CMGC is that one sole contract with the design builder. This process here is the same, working collaboratively through assigning risks and coming up with that GMP. Continuing with the progressive design build, this is the project advancement. So first step, the PCM reviews and confirms the detail of risk and estimate for the project. Then number two, the PDB team comes on and validates that design and the construction risk and the cost that's been made by HNTB and HDR so far. Third, the PDB team performs pre-construction tasks that lead to that GMP. And number four, construction can be done with the oversight with the risk mitigation continuing. So who is using PDB on the transportation side? When we started this journey, It didn't seem like there was too many. As I continued to branch out and ask around, it's quite a bit. So these are all the different states, and this is a graph provided by FHWA. These are all the states that are doing progressive design build on their transportation projects. And it's a large amount, and the great thing is they're all very transparent on sharing information. And I've talked to the majority of these DOTs in these different states. Reasons to use progressive design build. Number one, a big value to us is being able to select the design builder, to be able to select the contractor based off qualifications. We have that single entity responsible with the design builder that I talked about earlier. We get transparency into their costs. We maintain a high level of design influence because it's a collaborative design, especially up to that GMP. There's a lot of flexibility, and we're able to keep stakeholders involved throughout the design. We maintain a risk register and work on risk identification and mitigation. Potential for innovation both in the design and the construction, having a contractor early involvement, and then the early work packages. To highlight where we can use the early work package, so this is a rendering of the braided ramp. This was done by HNTB at the interview with us. And I thought it was really cool. I actually took a Google Earth snapshot, threw it into ChatGPT, and I turned this rendering into this. And that's actually the roof of the building, the paint job, the striping. All of this is entirely accurate. So that took me about 1 minute to go from this rendering to this rendering using ChatGPT. I was personally super excited about this. So I was expecting more of like an applause. Oh, no, you guys shouldn't. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. So this is a great example of early work packages. The braided ramp is clearly the most complicated part of this project. We have right-of-way, we have utility relocations. There's a lot happening in this area. So early work packages opens up a lot of flexibility for us. If we get hung up on a certain part of this project, maybe we go over to the toll lanes and concentrate on that area. Maybe we can have an early work package that lets us start work on this braided ramp that helps us finalize certain other aspects. So this is a really good example of we're going to look closely at this and say, hey, can we work here or do we need to split this? But we don't have to wait till everything is 100% finalized everywhere on the project before we start work, which is a gigantic advantage. Moving on to DBIA, Design Build Institute of America. Back in December, I said that we were all in with DBIA. They are certainly the gold standard for design build. So this is their slide that I borrowed. This is becoming the owner of choice, which really resonates with us because that's one of our key priorities. So following their checklist, we will champion their design build done right. They have manuals, presentations, we'll continue to follow that. We'll train our staff on this. So Director of Projects Stephanie Hugh and I went to a full day PDB training hosted by DBIA last year, having DBIA certified professionals on staff, enforcing their best practices, selecting an owner advisor with the DBI certifications, which is also a priority for us with HNTB, and they do have their DBI certifications. And then we'll be holding DBI education and stakeholder events here. This is a picture. This is actually one of the highlights for me in the last year. This is the owners forum at the DBIA National Conference. It was a transportation conference in Dallas. This is all owners. This is all DOTs. The entire room is full of DOTs and alternative delivery. And we had 2 hours to really talk without any other consultants, contractors, nobody else in the room. And the big part of the discussion was progressive design build. So that's something that everybody's focusing on, and this is what I was wanting to see. I was wanting to see dozens of owners in the transportation space across the country sharing information about progressive design build. And so this is my big animation. So I hope everybody's ready. I was going to do a small little drum roll. Ta-da! I did that on my own, and I'm going to take the credit for that. That was incredible, and I appreciate that applause as well. That's 2 for today. which means we're doing a good job over here. So this is the table. So this was already the highlight for me, but it's even more special that I'm there under CCTA. Dave Thomas is there from RCTC, who's been incredibly helpful from the beginning. And then next to him is FHWA, Kat with FHWA. And she was the one that actually helped RCTC with the legislation. And already, since this conference, has been really helpful, providing PDB information to us. Just going to help us navigate through some of the different rules we have, and just entirely helpful. So I was pretty close. I was going to have like arrows flying everywhere of all the different DOTs. So maybe at the board meeting, maybe we'll get a little bit crazier. I don't know. Okay, so in that room, I would say that this is probably the DOTs that were in that room. So fortunately, I got a part of this ACM Peer Exchange group. This is the Alternative Contract Methods group. They meet about every 3 months. It's hosted, it's entirely owners. And as you can see, it was pretty much all DOTs till I squeezed in there with CCTA and we brought in RCTC with me. So we just had a recent meeting a couple of weeks ago. People say, what topics do you want to discuss? They figure out who's willing to talk on that, and then they come in and give presentations. So a few weeks ago was a 2-hour presentation, gave some really good information about design build, GMPs, and this is a group that when Dave Thomas, RCTC, and I asked for information, they were able to provide it really quickly. So this is an invaluable group that we're a part of, and I did learn that when I'm at these national people, it's really hard to describe what CCTA is, and maybe I need to work on it. But I just called myself a mini DOT, and I think that's what helped me get into this group, that we're a mini DOT. So we're the only non-DOTs and really helpful group here. So for the owner of choice, we want to have a DBI certified person on staff. So I'm super excited that this is my progress. I just need 4 more months of being on this project, and then I'll get my certification. So I've completed the required 3-day workshop. There's reference checks. I had to submit design build projects, and they verified all of that and then passed the DBI test. So by September 2026, we'll officially have a DBI certified person on staff. All right. Thanks for that journey. We're moving on to the actual subject that I came here for, which is the procurement of the PCM. So this is the entire scope of work for the entire PCM contract. So project management, design, right-of-way, toll systems, contract procurement management, independent cost estimator, project controls, CM and oversight during construction, and then our project closeout. For our procurement, we released the RFP in December 19th, 2025. Proposals due January 30th. We received 5 proposals, and we shortlisted 4 firms with Arcadis, HNTB, Kimley Horn, and TY Lin. Interviews were done March 12th, and we had our proposal evaluation team, which had Caltrans and CCTA staff, a total of 5 people. And then we also had BAFA join in during the interviews as a non-scoring representative. All 4 of these firms did outstanding. This was an extremely competitive procurement. The proposals were really top-notch. All 4 firms did outstanding in the interviews. And even with that, HNTB was the clear winner. They were the highest score on the proposal. They were the highest score on the interview. They were the highest score on references. And they're the unanimous #1 team from everybody on the evaluation team and BAFA. So it made it really easy for all of us that this was just the clear winner, which is even more impressive knowing how competitive this was. Want to highlight a little bit of the experience at HNTB. I know this is going to be an impossible slide to read up on the screen here, but this is a list of their progressive design build experience. They are the #1 PDB transportation consultant in the country. And that was absolutely verified at the DBI conference. As I went around and talked to the different owners, HNTB kept coming up, and they are the ones that were developing the plans, the cost strategy. They're the ones refining how PDB is done in transportation so that it's going to work. And that's the task that we're all working towards, PDB's worked in the vertical world for a decade, for I don't know how long time. It's very standard there. But transportation has unique challenges. We have a unique culture, and HNTB has been developing the different ways to have this really fit for transportation. So this is their PDB experience, but we needed a team that was familiar with CMGC because that's just been more common, and that's how you establish the guaranteed maximum price. Design build, because during that phase 2, it's basically a typical design build, and we needed a company with express lanes. So HNTB delivered all of that. This is a list of everything they've been a part of. Quite a few people on the team were a part of the Caltrans Presidio Parkway, which would be the most relevant project in our area, especially with Caltrans, so that's super helpful. A lot of express lane, a lot of PDB, and a lot of California experience. This is a map that shows in the dark blue the different design PDB projects they have around the country, and the lighter blue is the express lane projects. Another graphic, hard to read, this is the proposed schedule HNTB's done. They absolutely did their homework on the proposal. We gave a lot of latitude to the firms to tell us, we need you to tell us how you're going to run this project. We gave about 70 pages of people to be able to show us what they know, and HNTB was just the clear experts on every aspect of it in the proposal. And here's a detailed schedule they've put together. Some of the key milestones, April 2027 is when we anticipate having the PDB team on board, which is that yellow line kind of in the middle. And then the yellow line on the right is in August 2028 is when we anticipate starting construction, and then finishing construction in August 2030. So this is a slide I showed earlier with the different phases of progressive design build. We are actually the award today to HNTB is just going to be for phase 1A, which is the box that's shown here. Normally, we would kind of break it up into phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, but this project's name is the Express Lane Phase 1. And so we said, well, maybe we'll call this phase 1, phase 1, phase 1, phase 2, and then no one knew what phase we were talking about. So I said, all right, let's just call it phase 1A, and then we'll work our way to 1B, 1C. So that's our own, I understand it might get confusing because we have the PDB phases, but we will be sticking to phase 1A, 1B, 1C as we work through the HNTB contract and the PDB. So the award today is for phase 1A, which is the PCM developing the procurement documents, defining the criteria, and then issuing the RFQ, RFP, and getting the PDB on board. And it goes up to the point that the PDB signs the agreement. Some of the tasks in phase 1A is putting together a project management plan. That will be a nice lift. The work on the agreements with Caltrans Walnut Creek, stakeholder communication plans, building out a master schedule, reviewing the different California PDB projects and picking up lessons learned and information we can use, holding industry outreach sessions. The number one lesson learned I hear from everybody on Progressive Design Build is you got to have the right team. And fortunately, we get to pick the team based off qualifications. So that industry outreach is going to be important to make sure that we get the best team that fits us the best. Also work on project sequencing and look at early work packages. Doing as much with right-of-way and utility relocation as possible. That's one of our big priorities. We talked about the braided ramp. There is some right-of-way acquisition there, some major PG&E relocation. So by the time when we have HNTB on board to when we get the Progressive Design Build, we're going to try to move those as much as we can to get a head start on them. Also working on more detailed cost estimates, kind of a bottom-up cost estimate versus more traditional unit prices, gives us some more accurate. Working on risk review, environmental, PDB cost evaluation process and framework for those documents, PDB RFP, and then getting the PDB on board. So the deliverables from all of this is we'll have the PMP, quality assurance program, our schedule, confirmation report, risk register, issue logs, public outreach plan, RFP packages, cost estimate, financial reports, and the most important part of this phase is going to be having a signed contract with the PDB team. So for the project estimated cost and funding for this Phase 1A, it's just under $5 million. This is funded by Regional Measure 3. Now, we need a good amount of that RM3 money as our local match to the mega grant. So I've made a note here that it's pending the execution of the mega grant, but we do think there is some money that isn't assigned to the local match. So we are working on releasing some of that money, getting a contract signed, so that H&TB can at least get started on the procurement documents and more of the critical aspects. So we do still anticipate starting some work, even if we don't have the mega grant, but we can't use up that full $5 million without it. Phase 1B and 1C, we anticipate $25 million funded by RM3 and mega, and the PDB budget $162 million with RM3, STIP, and mega. So with all of that, the recommendation today is to seek authorization to execute the agreement 758 with H&TB for $4.98 million for Phase 1A services and allow Executive Director to make any non-substantive changes.
Thank you, Brandon. That was really detailed, but really exciting, too, to understand how progressive design build works and how we can make it a smooth project. Hopefully, we'll keep our fingers crossed. We've been waiting so long to get this project going, so it's great to see that it's definitely moving ahead. Any questions or comments, Sue?
So, thank you. And it was actually very informative, all the beginning part, because I don't know any of that stuff. So very helpful. Except for except for that scheme. I have seen that many times. So H&TB clearly looks like, the best qualified for this. Was there a wide range? Was there bids for dollar amounts? Was there a wide range of that, or?
So the way that the professional services procurement works, we have to pick off of qualifications only.
Okay.
And then after they're selected, we open up their prices, and we're not even allowed to see anybody else's prices.
Okay, all right,
So.
good to know. Well,
Good question.
answers that question.
Okay, Newell?
Brandon, I agree with you. Great presentation. Progressive design build, they all do two things. Most importantly, reduces the cost risk between design and construction, no question. What neither do, and particularly in this case, when you have an area that you're going to build in that has a lot of existing infrastructure that was built a long time ago, 50, 60 years ago, lack of documentation and things like that, in an incredibly heavily traveled area, high risk on the unknowns. So while we might, with this process, on all of the Innovate 680, all the phases except for one, I think this is perfect. What I worry about is the braided ramp section. Difficult to work in. You can't do the pothole. You can't do the discovery because you don't have a time that's very easily accessible to get in there and really find out ahead of time, the potholing and all of that. So in this case, that would be the area I would draw a big red ring around as we go into the various phases, is how on that one, because the unknown area of that, the unknown what's there, what may or may not have to be relocated, the things that we're going to find and not know, is really, really high risk, more than anything I think I've seen us work in. And, it goes all the way back to 1959 into throughout the 60s. With the BART construction in that area. And there just wasn't the technology for as-built. Caltrans, as we've seen, didn't have, they pretty much took the design drawings and that's what you think you had. So on this case, how can we better, just for that phase, because the rest of it is pretty easy to me. And I think we'll have a win on both the design contractor relationship and on those existing conditions, to be able to really define ahead of time. What can we do in that section? How can we mitigate that? Because I'm just off the top of my head, I could see that we could blow out a budget 50% just by a few key things, because the staging alone of that has got to be at least half the cost of that project. Right? So I don't know if staging is the right thing, but for traffic control and things like that during construction of that. So I'm just wondering in that area, what's the thought process and how can we in that area try to minimize, even though this is the right approach, but it only is solving, I think, half of that.
And you said the braided ramp area, right?
Right.
Okay.
Just in that area.
So I would say that this is the perfect case for progressive design build, is that area. So on a typical design bid build, you'd have some potholes, you get it, the contractor goes out there and there's a lot of unknowns. Since we know that's the most challenging spot, we can do pre-construction work, investigation out there on a time and material basis with the design build team until everybody feels comfortable with what we have, and then we can assign that risk. And we can stage it in different areas. One conversation I really liked I had with Ivan Ramirez, former director of construction, a few months ago, is I asked him for his risk spreadsheet for Bollinger and how they broke it out during construction. And what he told me is that they designed away the risks. So during the time and material aspect in phase one, if they identified a risk, they did investigation, they worked on it, they did 3D modeling, they changed the design to essentially get rid of the risk. Now, we'll never be able to get rid of all of the risk, but that will be a big part of these conversations with PDB team, is exactly what you're saying. We're gonna all know, so it can be more potholing, more investigation, getting GPR out there to really find out if there are any utilities in that area. As far as the staging, we've sent type selection report to Caltrans for that bridge. And we're giving two options just to give the PDB team some flexibility. But one's the cast in place, which is more standard, and that one would have a little bit more complicated staging. It takes up a lot more area. It takes a lot longer. The other alternative we've proposed is precast girders. That greatly simplifies the staging, the impacts to that yard.
Speeds up time.
Speeds up time. So when we've already looked at the staging there, and we have to go in there and basically drill a foundation, and the traffic can stay there. We've already set up the K-rail and everything. And then in one night, you can set the girders, and you can keep traffic the way it is. So it's certainly a high priority, but the PDB is not only innovation and design, we have the contractor in the room during design providing suggestions on how the construction and the staging can happen.
I know all of that.
Okay.
And I'm not even questioning any of that. I said, my first statement was, I believe this is the right solution. Good. Bollinger's not a good example. That was an easy one. That's a low-level, low-hanging fruit, very little. We knew the utilities, the fuel lines and things like that, and easy access. This potentially could be the worst traffic jam in the Bay Area created by this project. No question. Right? I mean, you're going to disrupt an area that is so congested right now. This is a great solution, but to get through that, so all I'm saying is that this still has high risk, even with all of those things, only for that area, because you cannot access it the way you think you can. There's just no time of day that you can get in there to do that. So all I'm asking is, not a complete answer now, draw a red line around that area.
Yeah.
And we need to spend every ounce of energy and knowledge to solve that. Because if we find something that's in the way and we didn't know about it, gridlock.
Yep.
And time and distance on that project is going to affect all the cities on there. It's really bad now. I mean, to get here, this morning was actually great. It was 20 minutes to go 6.7 miles. Otherwise, that's an hour on an average every day without incidents. It's even worse. And we've seen that climbing. So by the time we get to this, so draw a red line, spend every intelligent resource you can find to figure out what's there. Because I'm absolutely confident we're not going to find any real good data. We're going to have to discover all that on our own. So big caution.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think this is still the right solution. Again, well done.
Darlene?
I almost hate to ask, but is there any update on the mega grant? Did they find another piece of paper we need to fill
No,
out?
so we are, I mean, Maddie kind of, I think, shared a little insights on this in terms of the staffing issues and everything that we're seeing in federal highways and DOT, but we're still, legal review during their review, have identified this additional form because we are using this alternative delivery method, progressive design build. And so we're using our resources and contacts and connections to get an understanding of like, we just need the form, like, and we haven't gotten the form yet. So we're trying to identify the person that is supposed to give us the form. So this has been the challenge that we've had for the last couple weeks, and Jason's helping, I've been working through my contacts, and so we're trying to find, I think in the meantime, I mean, they basically said we have to follow the SEP 14 process, which is basically like an experimental project process, and so I think it'd be helpful, now that, if we can get H&TB engaged, we can maybe have them and help and engage them to start working through that process, and that way we can get ahead of the curve a little bit. But I think in the meantime, we're working on, so it's just bureaucracy. I don't think there's anything political about this. It's just, we're working through bureaucracy at the federal highways level, so.
Thank you. Brendan, I just have a comment here. I think this is very exciting that it's going, and I know I've talked with Stephanie Hu about this before. I noticed on slide 34 that you're anticipating construction could possibly start in July of 2028. If that happens, are we at CCTA, that's you, and maybe Stephanie, and certainly Lindy Johnson, prepared to inform the public about what the heck's going on? Because if what Newell says is right, oh my gosh, we're going to have the biggest traffic jam in history, in the middle of 2028, that might not go down very well. So I'm now looking at Lindy too. We need to be prepared for possible disasters, delays, and lots of encouragement sent out to the public. So I just wanted to make that comment there. But anyway, I think this is very, very exciting.
I'll quickly respond. I tried to not have too many redundant slides. So I originally had this slide that showed all the different work happening on the corridor that we've shared, which continues to be a high priority for us. So it's not just this project, it's our 684 interchange is going to happen at the same time. CARM could be happening around the same time. Caltrans will have their project. So the PIO, the public, is going to be a huge priority for us. We're working with Caltrans and coordinating how this corridor works. But it is certainly a priority, and I'm working directly with Lindy to come up with plans for it.
Yeah, messaging. That's really great. And I see Lindy shaking her head there in agreement, so that's good. Okay, any other comments here?
I just
Noah?
had, thank you, I just had, Chris kind of reminded me of this. Where's Caltrans on this? Since it's a different process in how they do, they have their own timelines. This is new. They've done a couple in Southern California. How is this district viewing this process, and is their review time realistic?
It's a great question. Caltrans is excited about this delivery model, and I just met with them again recently. I know Executive Director Tim Hale met with Dina back in maybe a couple of years ago, and they had excitement then. So they want to see this. They recognize how this is valuable. They want to see this go through. We've told them that this is going to be a good amount of effort from them, and maybe the most important thing from them is having expedited reviews. And another benefit of this process is typically we have our designer and we send it to Caltrans, and they find a few issues, and it really wastes a lot of time. There's a lot of value here having the PCM team review all of those deliverables before they go to Caltrans, and then Caltrans knowing that this is going to be a higher quality set they get, and we're going to give them heads up and expedite. So they are eager for this. We're also very lucky that RCTC's about a year ahead of us, and so those Caltrans folks are talking to each other. That's going well, and so we'll follow some of that model up here as well. But so far, their main project manager, who will be our main coordination, his name is Sam with Caltrans, very, very excited, and they're completely on board.
That is great to hear. I would go so far as to say, even if we had to pay them extra, invite them to come to some of those meetings.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So even though it goes through the PCM, and they say, okay, we reviewed them, boy, it wouldn't be bad to have them sitting in some of those meetings and
Yep.
say, hey, you guys ought to be looking at X, Y, Z.
Yep.
But glad to hear.
Yeah, maybe if I can just add really quick, this is the first progressive design build being AAA'd by another agency inside the Bay Area. So it's a learning curve for District 4, a learning curve for everybody. There's a lot of lessons learned from Southern California because they've been doing design build for almost about a decade now down in Southern California. But I think the other big success as part of this first phase of work is, nailing down that cooperative agreement with Caltrans, and just making sure we clearly identify all the roles and responsibilities and, how much time they're going to be investing, dedicating to the project, and then obviously cost and those types of things. But I think that cooperative agreement with Caltrans is going to be really key, in this next phase.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone who wants to speak on this item in the audience? And Emily, do we have anyone online who wants to?
We have no public comment, written or virtual.
Okay, so bringing it back here to the committee. Do I hear a motion?
So moved?
Okay, moved by Noack, seconded by Arnich. Any discussion? No? Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bernal,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner Noack,
Yes?
Vice Chair Arnerich,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously.
All right,
Great, thank you. And thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. So our next regular agenda item is going to be presented by Stephanie Hu, and she's going to discuss State Route 4 operational improvements. Welcome, Stephanie.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Stephanie, your Director of Projects at CCTA. This is an action item seeking your action for the SR4 Operational Improvement Project. Happy to present on another corridor in the county, been working on 680 a lot, so it's a good change. And this corridor is much needed for improvements. So as you know, Highway 4 experiences heavy congestion. AM peak is in the westbound direction, and a PM peak period, heavy congestion in the eastbound. This is just anecdotal, but there's an article early April that was published by SF Chronicles, listing these two corridors, eastbound and westbound 4, as one of the top 10 bottlenecks in the Bay Area. So that's just, everybody knows Highway 4 is challenging in terms of travel. So the SR4 Operational Improvement Project is a key project in the strategic plan. It is from 680 to Bailey Row in both direction of Highway 4. CCTA completed a planning document called Project Initiation Document, or the PID, that you may hear in 2017. And in that document, it includes several alternatives, but also packages of improvements in both direction, eastbound and westbound, that included variation of extension of a lane or new aux lane, or converting aux lane to a GP lane or general purpose lane. The packaging of improvements was done in an intentional way, really, for us to deliver these projects as standalone projects with individual benefits, in order for us to move forward with small pieces of it as funding becomes available. The eastbound has started the next phase of work, which is project approval environmental document. For initial phase, a few years ago, we started that earlier in April. The reason for the pause was COVID. We were unsure about our funding situation. It is funded by Measure J. And also the SB 743 implementation that was really uncertain 5 to 6 years ago. So this morning, we're focusing on the OIP project, westbound initial phase. It's from Willow Pass Road in Port Chicago in Concord. We already said that the AM peak congestion is heavy in this area. We are ready to start project approval environmental document phase, or PAD, for this initial phase. We secure state funding and federal funds for this. And then also completing PAD is essential to compete for design and construction dollars. So this will make this project more competitive for future funding. This is a map showing the scope of work for this initial phase in the westbound direction. The yellow is really just the completed Phase 3 as under the 684 project, which at the time was not completed, but now it is. The packages that we'll be focusing on the westbound Phase 1 is in the light blue and brown pieces on this map. So, the mouse work here, yes. So basically, a new lane or essentially a new extension, actually when compared to an existing condition between the Willow Pass off-ramp and the Port Chicago off-ramp, creating an extra lane or second lane at the Port Chicago exit. And then also modifying the current mandatory exit on 242 to a split optional lane. So then it allows 3 lanes to go to 242 exit and 3 lanes to continue on to westbound 4. The scope of work under the PAD is to conduct preliminary design off of these high-level design work done during PID or the planning documents, conducting the required technical studies under environmental. This will include SB 743 implementation because of the small lane adds. Because of the VMT impacts, the CEQA document will be elevated to an EIR. We will do heavy public outreach because of the EIR. We will need to do public scoping in the beginning of the project to notify the public about this project. And then at the middle of it, we will need to release the draft environmental document for public review. And then the goal really here, again, is to obtain CEQA NEPA clearance and then project approval through Caltrans. Staff has completed the procurement for a consultant firm. We released the RFP back in November. We received 2 proposals. The evaluation panel included CCTA and Caltrans staff, and interviews were conducted early in the year. HDR was ranked as the #1 firm. So staff seeks approval or authorization for the chair to execute Agreement 744 with HDR upon completion of the federal pre-award audit, which is actually completed recently. We're just waiting for the funding application process as noted here in amount not to exceed $3,999,732 for the environmental and engineering services for the project to complete PAD and also to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the agreement language. With that, happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any questions here?
You get off easy.
I'm sorry?
I think,
Oh.
I
haven't
don't
any
think-
work yet. I'm sorry. Just the last part.
Stephanie, thank you. I guess we don't have any. Is there anyone here in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? And Emily, anyone online?
No public comment, written or virtual.
Okay, great. So is there a motion then here? And please, yes, speak in the mic. Yeah, thank you.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Okay, motion by G, seconded by Nowak. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bernal,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes?
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes.
My motion passes unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephanie. So our next item here is an action item presented by Andy Dillard, and he's going to talk about the Moraga and Canyon Road Complete Street Project.
There we go.
Welcome, Andy.
Good morning, Chair Kelly, Commissioners. Pleased to present this item this morning. This is a recommendation of approval of plans, specifications, and estimate, and authorizing construction advertisement for the Moraga Road and Canyon Road Complete Streets projects. It is one of the 5 sub-projects of the SS4A grant that was awarded back in fiscal year '22. And this is the first project out of the gate that is going to construction. So a little bit of background. Again, in fiscal year '22, CCTA was awarded approximately $29 million for the 5 sub-projects. At the time, the total project cost for all 5 was about $47 million. That cost has climbed as we've gone through design for the other 4 projects. So you'll get more on that later when I come before you for authorization for those projects. And as a reminder, we have to deliver all of these projects and close out by April of 2029. So again, a little bit more background. So CCTA, we're serving again as the implementing agency, with the locals as a sponsor agency. Thanks to Hisham, we have a direct agreement with FHWA. So basically, Caltrans' only involvement with these projects is clearance of NEPA. Otherwise, we're dealing with FHWA on everything else, including project authorization. So the Moraga Road and Canyon Road Complete Streets project, it's a really, really nice project. Moraga Road and Canyon Road, it spans from St. Mary's Road to the north to Sanders Road to the south. And one of the main features of the project is the installation of a new traffic signal at Country Club and Canyon Road, and then signal improvements at Moraga Way and St. Mary's Road along Moraga Road proper. There's also an RFB system going in at Sanders Drive, which is at the far south there of the project's segment. And then there'll be enhanced Class 2 bike lanes with high visibility pavement markings along the entire segment. Also will include some 2-stage turn boxes at a couple of signalized intersections. There'll be a new sidewalk segment at the north end at St. Mary's Road, which will connect to the Lafayette Moraga Trail, and there'll be some street trees installed along that new sidewalk segment. And then other features include medium pedestrian refuge islands. So this is a 4-lane cross section, so there's a pretty wide intersection. So those median nozzles will be going in to provide that additional enhanced safety. And I'll go into some of the other details of the project here, but funding for the project, again, it's about a $3.9 million project. About $3 million was awarded in SS4A for this, with the rest being local match. Here's a look at the cross section and the segments. Again, it's a 4-lane cross section, and one of the main features of the project is to provide those Class 2B buffered bike lanes with high visibility markings along the corridor. This is a look at all the different features. So again, from the south end of the project at Sanders, this is where the RFB system is going. And then progressing to the north, the Country Club Canyon intersection will get a brand new traffic signal. And then as we travel further north here, Moraga Way will get some signal improvements to the existing signal. And then further north at St. Mary's, there will also be signal improvements there. The north end of the project, this is where there's some lane configuration changes. So as I mentioned, it is a 4-lane cross section, and the roadway will stay that way, although as it transitions to St. Mary's, it goes down to 1 lane. So to accommodate the bicycle lanes and the buffers, and to keep some of the designated turn lanes, as you see here, it'll transition down to a 1-lane a little bit in advance of the Alta Mesa intersection. And then just a note, in the upper right-hand corner, that's where the Lafayette Moraga Trail intersects the road, and that's where the new sidewalk segment and street trees will be going in. It's a nice exhibit of the cross section when it will be done, as far as the buffer bike lanes along the segment proper. So we've done considerable outreach over the last year and a half. The council, Moraga Town Council, has seen the design, the preliminary design and conceptual designs, and have approved those. We're pretty close to 100% completion of the plans. 95%'s been complete, and we feel confident that we're very, very close to completing 100%. NEPA and right-of-way is in progress, and we expect that to be approved in May and go to construction in July.
Advertisement would be in May or June of this year. A couple of items, critical path items, challenges with the project. The town is doing a pavement rehabilitation project, which they're actually integrating into this project. So they're going to really be handling like most of the paving along the corridor. We will do some spot paving, but their pavement project will sort of be combined with this project. It'll still be separate, but about midway through the project, after we get all the concrete work done, the town will come in, they'll do the paving, and then we'll come back in and we'll finish with the striping and the signal improvements. And then lastly, coordination with the La Marinda Smart Signal System project, which you heard last month. We're going out to bid with that project. And there is new equipment that's being installed at 2 of these intersections that are getting the improvement. So we'll need to make sure that we coordinate with that as well. So here's another look at the schedule. Project completion is estimated for March of 2027. So with that, staff is seeking approval of Resolution 2615P. It'll authorize the Executive Director to approve the project design in accordance with Government Code Section 830.6 to preserve design immunity, publicly advertise the construction contract at the Executive Director designee's discretion upon successful obligation of FHWA authorization to proceed, approve changes and issue addenda to the bidding documents during the advertisement period, and then lastly, publicly open all bids received. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions here? Darlene?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So Andy and maybe Brandon, this will wake him up over there now that he's so proud of himself. So which entity is doing the construction management for this?
So we actually just released a mini RFP for the Moraga Complete Streets and the La Marinda Smart Signals last week. I think proposals are going to be due May 20th. So we haven't selected it. We just had a pre-proposal meeting yesterday, but we do anticipate, and we think there's a good chance that there'll be one firm that's able to do both in similar areas. So not sure yet, but we'll know in a few weeks.
This is from your on-call contracts,
Yep,
right?
from the on-call, yep.
Newell?
Andy, thank you. Great presentation. I also appreciate you attached the plans. I love looking at plans. But thank you for doing that. Yeah, this is great. And Moraga, I know, is going to greatly value this project.
Andy, I just have one question. On slide 7, you showed the lane reduction from 2 to 1. So that's going to be okay with everyone? No one's screaming bloody murder?
Yeah, no complaints there. So it's been part of the conceptual design since the beginning. We have done some tweaks to that to just to enhance safety even further. But in general, yeah, the concept has been blessed by the town. So.
Yeah, that's great. I don't know the area very well. I'm sure there are a lot of people who ride bikes, so I'm glad to see that the bike lanes will be appreciated. So any,
Chair,
yes,
just
please.
one one comment. We had a great fireside chat with the town of Moraga, with the town manager, as well as the staff. And they were just really stressing and reinforcing like how important this project is to their downtown. It really accesses their downtown area to the Moraga Trail. And so they really feel, and this is a really good example of just the projects that we could do in the future to better connect the trails to the downtowns, right? And activate more access to the downtowns through biking and active transportation. And so we just got well, the town did actually. The town actually just got another Safe Streets for All grant. It's a planning grant to basically look at Moraga Road. And now that goes all the way down to Lafayette, or no, Orinda, I'm sorry, Orinda. And so, so we're working with them on another planning grant. So basically through this project and then also that grant, it really kind of focuses and starts turning their downtown more accessible, but also they're looking at a development to turn a development into a shared mobility hub. And so to help provide more greater access to their downtown area. So this is just I just want to share high level, just some, and reinforce the value of this project and kind of how it's activating their downtown.
Okay, thank you. Emily, does anyone want to speak on this item?
We have no public comment, written or virtual.
And I don't see anyone here in the audience. So bringing it back to the committee, is there a motion then for this resolution?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion by Bernal,
Second?
seconded by Noack. Emily, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bernal,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes?
Vice Chair Arnridge,
Yes.
Chair Kelly.
Yes,
All right, motion passes unanimously.
great, thank you. And thank you, Andy. We look forward to seeing this constructed. So I think our last item here is going to be on Senate Bill 707. Who is going to present this? Oh, Terry Ann, you're online. I didn't see you in the room. Hi there.
Hello. So hi, I'm Terry Ann Grover, the Director of Administrative Services, and I will be presenting this item. I'm going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint here. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you letting me do this remotely, as I've injured my ankle and can't drive into the office at the moment or put weight on it. So, but I'll be providing an overview of the roles and the responsibilities and structure of the Authority Board, Standing Committees, and Advisory Committee, in addition to discussing the remote meeting options for Standing and Advisory Committees under Senate Bill 707. The Authority Board is the governing body of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, as defined in our Administrative Code, Chapter 1, and exercises all the powers and authority as the final decision-making body to carry out the goals, objectives, mission, and vision of the authority. The Authority Board establishes and receives, recommendations from the Standing and Advisory Committees to provide public, technical, and policy input, ensures geographic balance and subregional input, and supports Authority Board deliberations. The Authority Board also takes the final action to set policy direction and approve the programs, projects, and funding, and adopt the plan, studies, and budgets. Standing and Advisory Committees are referred to as eligible subsidiary bodies in Senate Bill 707, and they do not have primary subject matter or decision-making authority and serve in an advisory capacity, providing recommendations to the Authority Board. Standing committees are defined in our Administrative Code, Chapter 1, as the Administration and Projects Committee, the Planning Committee, and the Executive Committee. Our advisory committees are defined in our Admin Code as the Citizens Advisory Committee, the Technical Coordinating Committee, and the 4 Regional Transportation Planning Committees. And in furtherance of the authority's goals, 4 additional advisory committees have been established since the Admin Code was adopted, and that's the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Bus Transit Coordinating Committee, the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, as well as the Innovate 680 Policy Advisory Committee. The Regional Transportation Planning Committees play an advisory role to the Authority Board. They work in partnership and collaboration with the authority, ensuring subregional planning, coordination, goals, and priorities that are advanced countywide. The Authority Board prescribes the powers, duties, and responsibilities of each RTPC. And in our admin code, it does define that other voting rights and procedures of the RTPCs governing the conduct of their activities shall be determined by each RTPC with the concurrence of the authority. The authority has received remote meeting procedures from a few of the RTPCs, and they're seeking concurrence from the Authority Board. After careful evaluation of whether these options align with the authority's operational capacity and policy objectives, staff is recommending that the RTPCs be consistent with authority processes and procedures. Currently, there are 2 options for our board, standing, and advisory committee members to meet remotely. One is the traditional Brand Act requirements, and then one is the reasonable accommodations policy. So under the traditional Brand Act requirements, the address of the member's location must be agendized, and the notice must be posted at that location and accessible to the public. And then under the reasonable accommodations policy, which was adopted by the board in October 2024, a remote option is provided as a reasonable accommodation for a member due to a disability and requires no posting requirements nor the address to be agendized. We do have an established process in place, and upon approval of an application, the member may attend remotely. And now there is this new option for consideration under Senate Bill 707 that went into effect on January 1st of this year. And this provides that local agencies have an option to adopt a modified teleconferencing procedure for public meetings of advisory and standing committees only, subject to the Ralph M. Brown Act. Staff have evaluated the applicability of Senate Bill 707 for advisory and standing committee meetings, and we've identified several key issues with this legislation. The effectiveness of the meetings often depends on collaborative discussion, stakeholder and public engagement, and collaboration and informal interaction for our standing and advisory committees. And we feel that this is better supported in an in-person setting. And then maintaining in-person meetings does ensure consistent, reliable, and equitable access for the public, and it preserves the traditional transparency framework that was established under the Brown Act. Allowing for some and not others, other committees could create inconsistencies in procedures and lead to confusion among the public and committee members. Also, that remote participation may present safety concerns. It does still require that one staff member be at that public location that's open for the public members. However, there would be potentially no members attending in person, and this would hamper a public speaker in addition from speaking and engaging effectively with the members if they're all on a screen. The use of also remote procedures carries potential compliance and technical risk under the Brown Act. If there were any technical issues to occur, we would not be able to continue conducting our meetings until the issue is resolved. And if they can't be resolved, we would have to postpone the subject matter to a later meeting. And this could delay the authority board from taking formal action to advance our objectives. While SB 707 provides flexibility for remote participation, staff finds that the benefits do not outweigh the administrative, operational, and compliance challenges for the standing and advisory committees to meet remotely. Continuing in-person meetings aligns with the intent of the Brown Act to promote transparency, accessibility, and public engagement. Remote options are allowed under the Brown Act still via the traditional requirements and the reasonable accommodation policy. So staff is recommending that the board elect not to authorize remote meeting procedures for standing and advisory committees under SB 707. And this would include the regional transportation planning committees. And we're asking that we continue to require in-person meetings in accordance with the standard provisions of the Ralph M. Brown Act, as well as permit the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 accommodations, which would be the reasonable accommodations when requested. So with that said, that concludes my presentation, and I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Terry Ann. Any questions here? Sue?
So I know on several boards, the Citizens Advisory Committee have had a tough time maintaining participation because of no remote access. Have we had any issues with our CAC or any of the Citizens Advisory committees? And retaining members?
For the most part, we've been able to maintain achieving a quorum. There is an occasional meeting here and there of the Citizens Advisory Committee where we may not have a quorum, but for the most part, I would say since we returned back to meetings, being remote, fully remote during COVID and returning back, we have had pretty good attendance in person and have only had a few meetings where we did not meet quorum.
Yeah, I'm not so much concerned about quorum as general participation, because.
Yeah, I'd say we've had really good participation from our committees, especially, I think it's actually improved recently.
Okay.
Yeah, the meetings that I've looked at online, there are a lot of folks here, so that's great. Any other questions or comments?
Just thank you,
No,
Terry Ann,
yeah.
for this. And I understand Emily was sharing with me that you also are looking at replacing our current Granica system. So sounds like everything is still moving forward, and we appreciate your recommendation.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on this item or online? Emily, anybody?
We have no public comment, written or virtual.
Okay, thank you. So bringing it back here, I think we need a motion. So would someone just like to make a motion here?
So moved.
All right, motion by Arnich. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by G. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Alt-Bernal,
Yes.
Commissioner G,
Yes.
Commissioner Nowak,
Yes?
Vice Chair Arnrich,
Yes.
Chair
Yes,
Kelly.
sorry.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. So that concludes all of our regular agenda items. We have no correspondence or communications. We're moving on to commissioner and staff comments. I have no comments. Do any of the commissioners here have any comments to add? No, then I'll turn to staff. Tim, or anyone else?
Just two comments. One is, the workshop is coming together. Materials should be coming out either today or tomorrow, so stay tuned on that. Some brief staff reports, and I would just maybe focus on the presentations that are going to be available. We have a lot of good confirmed attendance from all the local jurisdictions attending the board workshop. I think we're missing 4 cities right now that we're still trying to confirm. And then the other thing I just wanted to also mention is the Redefine Mobility Summit is also coming together, so I'll make mention at the May board meeting as well, but we're getting really great confirmation of speakers and demo day and demo zone and all those fun things. So hopefully everyone has that on their calendar. It's going to be a really exciting day.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no other comments here, we will adjourn this meeting. The next regular meeting is proposed for June 4th for the APC, and this meeting is now adjourned at 10:06 a.m.